are seated or laying down, comfortable, while listening to this part. I hope you've had a good day, and that everything is as you want it to be, or that you can put your mind at ease while listening to me read to you. Dune, Part 3. To attempt an understanding of Muad'Dib without understanding his mortal enemies, the Harkonnens, is to attempt seeking truth without knowing falsehood. It is the attempt to see the light without knowing darkness. It cannot be. From Manual of Muad'Dib by the Princess Irulan. It was a relief globe of the world, partly in shadows, spinning under the impetus of a fat hand that glittered with rings. The globe sat on a free-form stand at one wall of a windowless room, whose other walls presented a patchwork of multicolored scrolls, film books, tapes, and reels. Light glowed in the room from golden balls hanging in mobile suspensor fields. An ellipsoid desk with a top of jade pink petrified Alaka wood stood at the center of the room. Variform suspensor chairs ringed it, 2 of them occupied. In one sat a dark-haired youth of about 16 years, round of face and with sullen eyes. The other held a slender, short man with a feminine face. Both youth and man stared at the globe, and the man half hidden in shadows spinning it. A chuckle sounded beside the globe. A basso voice rumbled out of the chuckle. There it is, spider. The biggest man trap in all history, and the Duke's headed into its jaws. Is it not a magnificent thing that I, the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, do? Assuredly, Baron, said the man. His voice came out tenor with a sweet, musical quality. The fat hand descended to the globe, stopped the spinning. Now all eyes in the room could focus on the motionless surface and see that it was the kind of globe made for wealthy collectors or planetary governors of the Empire. It had the stamp of imperial handicraft about it. Latitude and longitude lines were laid out in fine hair platinum wire. The polar caps were in sets of finest cloud milk diamonds. The fat hand moved, tracing details on the surface. I invite you to observe, the basso voice rumbled. Observe closely, Piter. And you too, Vade Rotha, my darling. From 60 degrees north to 70 degrees south, these exquisite ripples. Their coloring, does it not remind you of sweet caramels? And nowhere do you see blue lakes or rivers or seas. And these lovely polar caps, so small. Could anyone mistake this place? Arrakis. Truly unique. A superb setting for a unique victory. A smile touched Piter's lips. And to think, Baron, the Padisha Emperor believes he's given the Duke your spice planet. How poignant. That's a nonsensical statement, the Baron grumbled. You say this to confuse young Vade Rotha, but it is not necessary to confuse my nephew. The sullen Sire et cher cousin. No title. Nothing. It's a good name, the Baron growled, and his voice betrayed his impatience. What does dear Leto say? He says, your offer of a meeting is refused. I have oftentimes met your treachery, and this all men know. And the Baron asked, he says the art of Conley still has admirers in the Empire. He signs it. Duke Leto of Arrakis. Piter began to laugh. Of Arrakis. Oh my, this is almost too rich. Be silent, Piter, the Baron said, and the laughter stopped as though shut off with a switch. Conley, is it? The Baron asked. Vendetta, huh? And he uses the nice old word so rich in tradition. To be sure, I know he means it. You made the peace gesture, Piter said. The forms have been obeyed. For a Mentat, you talk too much, Piter, the Baron said, and he thought, I must do away with that one soon. He has almost outlived his usefulness. The Baron stared across the room at his Mentat assassin, seeing the features about him that most people notice first. The eyes, the shaded slits of blue within blue, the eyes without any whites in them at all. A grin flashed across Piter's face. It was like a masked grimace beneath those eyes like holes. But, Baron, never has revenge been more beautiful. It is to see a plan of the most exquisite treachery, to make Leto exchange Caladan for Dune, and without alternative because the Emperor orders it. How waggish of you. In a cold voice, the Baron said, you have a flux of the mouth, Piter. But I am happy, my Baron, whereas you are touched by jealousy. Piter. Baron. Is it not regrettable you are unable to devise this delicious scheme by yourself? Someday I will have you strangled, Piter. Of a certainty, Baron. Event. But a kind act is never lost, eh? Have you been chewing Verite or Samuta, Piter? Truth without fear surprises the Baron, Piter said. His face drew down into a caricature of a frowning mask. But you see, Baron, I know as a Mentat, when you will send the executioner, you will hold back just so long as I am useful. To move sooner would be wasteful, and I am yet of much use. I know what it is you learned from that lovely Dune planet. Waste not. True, Baron. The Baron continued to stare at Piter. Fade Rotha squirmed in his chair. These wrinkling fools, he thought. My uncle cannot talk to his Mentat without arguing. Do they think I have nothing to do except listen to their arguments? Fade, the Baron said. I told you to listen and learn when I invited you in here. Are you learning? Yes, uncle. The voice was carefully subservient. Sometimes I wonder myself, I can feel pity towards the poor Duke Leto. Dr. Yue will move against him soon, and that'll be the end of all the Atreides. But surely Leto will know whose hand directed the blind doctor, and knowing that would be a terrible thing. Then why haven't you directed the doctor to slip a kind jaw between his ribs quietly and efficiently? Piter asked. You talk of pity, but the Duke must know when I encompass his doom, the Baron said, and the other great houses must learn of it. The knowledge will give them pause. I'll gain a bit more room to maneuver. The necessity is obvious, but I don't have to like it. Room to maneuver, Piter sneered. Already, you have the Emperor's eyes on you, Baron. You move too boldly. One day, the Emperor will send a legion or two of his Sardaukar down here onto Katie Prime, and that'll be the end to the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. You'd like to see that, wouldn't you, Piter? The Baron asked. You'd enjoy seeing the corpse of Sardaukar pillage through my cities and sack this castle. You'd truly enjoy that. Does the Baron need to ask? Piter whispered. You should have been a bashar of the corpse, the Baron said. You're too interested in blood and pain. Perhaps I was too quick with my promise of the spoils of Arrakis. Piter took 5 curiously mincing steps into the room, stopping directly behind Fade Ratha. There was a tight air of tension in the room, and the youth looked up at Piter with a worried frown. Do not toy with Piter, Baron, Piter said. You promised me the Lady Jessica. You promised her to me. For what, Piter? The Baron asked. For pain. Piter stared at him, dragging out the sight. Fade Rothar moved his suspension chair to one side, said, Uncle, do I have to stay? You said you'd... My darling Fade Rothar grows impatient, the Baron said. He moved within the shadows beside the globe. Patience fade. And he turned his attention back to the Mentat. What of the Dukeling? The child Paul, my dear Piter. The trap will bring him to you, Baron, Piter muttered. That's not my question, the Baron said. You'll recall that you predicted the Bane Gesserit witch would bear a daughter to the Duke. You were wrong. A Mentat. I'm not often wrong, Baron, Piter said. For the first time there was fear in his voice. Give me that. I'm not often wrong. And you know yourself these Bane Gesserit bear mostly daughters. Even the Emperor's consort had produced only females. Uncle, said Fade Ratha, you said there'd be something important here for me to listen to my nephew. The Baron said, he aspires to rule my barony, yet he cannot rule himself. The Baron stirred beside the globe, a shadow among shadows. Well then, Fade Ratha Harkonnen, I summoned you here, hoping to teach you a bit of wisdom. Have you observed our good Mentat? You should have learned something from this exchange. But, Uncle, a most sufficient Mentat. Piter, what did you say, Fade? Yes, but, indeed. But he consumes too much spice. wish my nephew to observe this about you. Then I'm on display, Peter said. Shall I dance? Shall I perform my various functions for this eminent vague wrath? Precisely, the Baron said. You were on display. Now be silent. He glanced at Fade Rotha, noting his nephew's lips, the full and pouting look of them, the Harkonnen genetic marker, now twisted slightly in amusement. This is a mentat, Fade. It has been trained and conditioned to perform certain duties. The fact that it's encased in a human body, however, must not be overlooked. A serious drawback that I sometimes think the ancients with their thinking machines had the right idea. They were toys compared to me, Peter snarled. You yourself, Baron, could outperform those machines. Perhaps, the Baron said. Ah, well. He took a deep breath, belched. Now, Peter, outline for my nephew the salient features of our campaign against the House of Atreides. Function as a mentat for us, if you please. Baron, I've warned you not to trust one so young with this information. My observations of I'll be the judge of this, the Baron said. I give you an order, mentat. Perform one of your various functions. So be it, Peter said. He straightened, assumed an odd attitude of dignity, as though it were another mask, but this time clothing his entire body. In a few days standard, the entire household of the Duke Leto will embark on a spacing guild liner for Arrakis. The guild will deposit them at the center. Sorry. The guild will deposit them at the city of Arrakeen rather than at our city of Karthag. The Duke's mentat, Terferawat, will have concluded rightly that Arrakeen is easier to defend. Listen carefully, Fade, the Baron said. Observe the plans within plans within plans. Fade rather nodded, thinking, this is more like it. The old monster is letting me in on secret things at last. He must really mean for me to be his heir. There are several tangential possibilities, Peter said. I indicate that House Atreides will go to Arrakis. We must not, however, ignore the possibility the Duke has contracted with the guild to remove him to a place of safety outside the system. Others, in like circumstances, have become renegade houses, taking family atomics and shields and fleeing beyond the Imperium. The Duke's too proud a man for that, the Baron said. It is a possibility, the proprietor said. The ultimate effect for us would be the same, however. No, it would not, the Baron growled. I must have him dead and his line ended. That's the high probability, Peter said. There are certain preparations that indicate when a house is going renegade. The Duke appears to be doing none of these things. So, the Baron sighed. Get on with it, Peter. At Arrakeen, Peter said, the Duke and his family will occupy the residency, lately the home of Count and Lady Fenring. The ambassador to the smugglers, the Baron chuckled. Ambassador to what? Vade rather asked. Your uncle makes a joke, Peter said. He calls Count Fenring ambassador to the smugglers, indicating the Emperor's interest in smuggling operations on Arrakis. his mouth made a soundless uh-oh. We've arranged diversions at the residency, Piter said. There will be an attempt on the life of the Atreides heir. An attempt which could succeed. Piter, the Baron rumbled. You indicated. I indicate accidents can't happen, Piter said. And the attempt must appear valid. Ah, but the lad has such a sweet young body, the Baron said. Side note, that's really gross. Of course, he's potentially more dangerous than the father, with that witch mother training him. A cursed woman. Ah, well, please continue, Piter. Hawat will have divined that we have an agent planted on him, Piter said. The obvious suspect is Dr. Yua, who is indeed our agent. But Hawat has investigated and found that our doctor is a Suck School graduate with imperial conditioning, supposedly safe enough to minister even to the Emperor. Great store is set on imperial conditioning. It's assumed that ultimate conditioning cannot be removed without killing the subject. However, as someone once observed, given the right lever, you can move a planet. We found the lever that moved the doctor. How? Feyd-Rautha asked. He found this fascinating subject. Everyone knew you couldn't subvert imperial conditioning. Another time, the Baron said. Continue, Piter. In place of Yua, Piter said, we'll drag a most interesting suspect across Hawat's path. The very audacity of this suspect will recommend her to Hawat's attention. Her, Feyd-Rautha asked. The Lady Jessica herself, the Baron said. Is it not sublime? Piter asked. Hawat's mind will be so filled with this prospect it'll impair his function as a mentat. He may even try to kill her. Piter frowned then. But I don't think he'll be able to carry it off. You don't want him to, eh? The Baron asked. Don't distract me, Piter said. While Hawat's occupied with the Lady Jessica, we'll divert him further with uprisings in a few garrison towns and the like. These will be put down. The Duke must believe he's gaining a measure of security. Then, when the moment is ripe, we'll signal Yue and move in with our major force. Go ahead. Tell him all of it, the Baron said. We'll move in, strengthened by 2 legions of Sardaukar disguised in Harkonnen livery. Sardaukar, Feyd-Rautha breathed. His mind focused on the dread Imperial troops, the killers without mercy, the soldier fanatics of the Padisha Emperor. You see how I trust you, Feyd, the Baron said. No hint of this must ever reach another great house, else the Landsraad might unite against the Imperial House, and there'd be chaos. The main point, Piter said, is this. Since House Harkonnen is being shifts voting strength within the Landsraad as it balances itself against the Emperor and his supporters. The Duke Leto, Piter said, may attempt to flee to the new Fremen scum along the desert's edge, or he may try to send his family into that imagined security, but that path is blocked by one of His Majesty's agents, the planetary ecologist. You may remember him, Kynes. Fade remembers him, the Baron said. Get on with it. You do not drool very prettily, Baron, Piter said. Get on with it, I command you, the Baron roared. Piter shrugged. If matters go as planned, he said, House Harkonnen will have a sub-fief on Arrakis within a standard year. Your uncle will have dispensation of that fief. His own personal agents will roll on Arrakis. More profits, Phaedra said. Indeed, the Baron said, and he thought, it's only just. We're the ones who damned Arrakis, except for the pure Mongol Fremen hiding in the skirts of the desert. And some tame smugglers bound the planet almost as tightly as the native labor pool. And the great houses will know that the Baron has destroyed their treaties, Piter said. They will know. They will know, the Baron breathed. Loveliest of all, Piter said, is that the Duke will know, too. He knows now. He can already feel the trap. It's true the Duke knows, the Baron said, and his voice held a note of sadness. He could not help but know. More's the pity. The Baron moved out and away from the globe of Arrakis. As he emerged from the shadows, his figure took on dimension, grossly and immensely fat, and with subtle bulges beneath folds of his subtle folds of his dark robes, to reveal that all this fat was sustained partly by portable suspensor harness to his flesh. He might weigh 200 standard kilos in actuality, but his feet would carry no more than 50 of them. I am hungry, the Baron rumbled, and he rubbed his protruding lips with a berenged hand, stared down at Faye Rama through fat and folded eyes. Send for food, my darling. We will eat before we retire. And that is the end of part 3. Thank you for joining me this evening. I hope you enjoyed the chapter as much as I enjoy reading it to you. Have a wonderful, wonderful